Can you imagine? The man standing before me turned out to be a werewolf. When he transformed into that massive beast right in front of my eyes, my world was completely turned upside down. Could you accept your Lola being a mythical creature? Chapter 11, Wolf Tales. I awoke from the morning sun shining through the large windows of Thane's bedroom. I looked at the floor fully expecting Thane to be asleep, but to my surprise he was nowhere in sight. I smiled, remembering last night. The first night we actually got to know each other and shockingly didn't argue. Well, there was a mild banter surrounding our superhero preference. Last night. So why do you like Spider-Man so much? Thane asked after he fought me over how much Superman is the greatest hero to exist. Well, he doesn't really have any weakness to stop him, I simply stated with a shrug. Thane looked at me expectant curiosity. Spider-Man's only weakness is his identity. He has no kryptonite to weaken him. When I was finished, Thane looked at me with awe and admiration as if he didn't care about what I was talking about but cared for me just rambling on with so much passion about something I liked. He continued staring at me, and I was self-consciously squirming about. Do I have something on my face? I deadpanned. That snapped him out of his daydream as he cleared his throat. Ugh, no. No, it's nothing. Tell me, why do you choose to become a doctor? He changed the topic. His question made me silent as it brought back the bad memories of my sister's struggles and that being the reason I chose the medical field. I don't want to talk about it, I mumbled. Thane took my hand in his and rubbed soothing circles with his thumb as he said, You don't have to talk about it, but just know that I'm here and ready to listen to you, whenever you're ready, he gently said, and I was relieved he didn't pressure me. Thank you, I said, squeezing his hand in mine as I gave him a thankful smile. Okay, enough sadness. What do you do anyways? I asked curiously. He laughed at my sudden shift in mood. Well, I take care of the pack. I handle a few businesses around town and in different states, which is in my family name. I do a lot of paperwork and I train the pack. He concluded as if he doesn't do anything at all. I was confused about one thing. What do you mean train the pack? He ambivalently answered me. Well, we train by learning how to fight in battle. And we build our muscles and test our speed as we learn how to use our strength and agility to our fullest potential. He looked at me warily. Please don't tell me you're a part of some mafia group. I steadily shifted away as I carefully watched him answer my question. He playfully smirked at me as he suddenly grabbed my waist and pulled me extremely close to him. So much for moving away. What if I said I was? He whispered in my ear. I felt intimidated by his closeness as I tried to answer him 99.9% honestly. The 0.1% being what I actually said. I would probably like you a whole lot more. I chuckled at his bemused expression as I continued, but then I would just be lying to your face. You little, he began as he started tickling me. Stop, I said in between laughter, trying to get his hands off me. Say you're sorry. He continued tickling the life out of me. Me, hiccup? I glared at him, knowing fully well that this pessimistic thing that is hiccups is going to take a while to go away. Even though I was glaring daggers at him, he continued on with his torture until I finally but reluctantly gave in. Fine. I hiccuped, sorry. He grinned at me. Sorry. What did you say? I didn't catch that. I stuck my tongue out at him like a little kid but nearly choked as I hiccuped once again. He suddenly got up from right next to me and went to the kitchen with an amused smile on his face. He returned with a glass of water, but I shook my head no because I was immune to that trick. Water never seemed to keep my diaphragm from moving with the sudden hiccups. It doesn't work. To my agent extraordinaire, Mylan Nilben, heart thou thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Hiccup, he said, bringing the glass to my lips as he pinched my nose together to cut off my breathing. Are you insane? I said, pulling away. Just trust me. How could I? Should I? What if I die? Those were the thoughts that were running through my brain as he gently grabbed my chin before moving back to pinch my nose with one hand and push the glass between my lips with his other hand. Obeying this blunt and callous guy, I dreadfully gulped the H2O down. He removed the glass and allowed me to breathe a few seconds after, and I waited. Nothing. There were no hiccups to my utter surprise. But what really shocked me was my action of leaning in to hug Thane. Not just me, but Thane was surprised by my action as well, but instantly returned the gesture. I reveled in his warm embrace, taking advantage of the situation, no matter how strange it may seem. I reluctantly pulled away, as I tried not to convey that I was actually quite comfortable in that position, feeling the awkward aftermath of my sudden affection dawning on us as my cheeks flamed red. I grabbed the glass off the coffee table and quickly drank, which turned out to be a bad idea because then Eschki grin made me laugh and water went flying all over his t-shirt. Maybe it was a bad idea after all. I think that's enough water for one night, Thane said, chuckling as he added to my embarrassment. For the remainder of the night we talked about anything and everything. Present. Today held an electrically anxious feel to it. But somewhere inside me, I felt as if things were about to change for the worse. I just couldn't shake the nagging ominous feeling I had. Realizing that Thane brought me from the couch to the bed after I fell asleep, instantly put a small smile on my face. Of course I didn't like him, but he was too much of a gentleman for me not to like. Or at least he acts like one. Too excited to waste a second, I hurriedly got dressed and zoomed down the flights of stairs as I made my directly to the kitchen, which was empty. I looked for Bailey everywhere as I wanted to apologize to her, but she was nowhere in sight. Deciding to just find Thane, I looked around for his office until I finally stumbled upon it. I knocked and, being unmannerly, entered without waiting for an answer, which was a mistake because in an office were about 5 other men sitting before Thane listening to his every word. He must pay his employees pretty good for them to be so attentive. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I timidly mumbled as I walked out and was about to close the door. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Thane called me back. Meeting dismissed, boys, he announced to the group of men before turning his full attention to me. I felt like a tiny little ant between the skyscraper men as they walked around me towards the door. Thane was already on his feet, approaching me as the last guy, who I recognized as Bailey's boyfriend Lucas, had a knowing grin on his face as he looked at me before closing the door behind him. Time to tell me everything, I said excitedly to Thane, who had a grim expression. Do I have to? He solemnly asked. I gave him an oblivious look as to Seda as he groaned in agony. Come on, you promised you'll tell me everything today. He looked at me for a few moments before he silently took my hand and led me outside. Somehow things always end up badly when we leave the sanction of his house, and I only prayed I will finally receive my answers. Instead of leaving through the front, Thane led me down the corridor towards the back door, where we ended up in his magnificent backyard. My mother planted these flowers, he began as he motioned his hand over to the various flowers. She always wanted to become a botanist, so my father purchased all her favorite flowers and more, just to put a smile on her face the day he told her his secret. So you Blackwood men run on secrets? I jokingly asked. He laughed it off as he continued and sat down on one of the benches. He knew that with time my mother would love him, but he also knew that what he had to tell her would crush her. Thane, as lovely as your parents' stories sound, I don't really see what it has to do with us. I clarified. Us, he smiled cheekily. I lightly slapped his arm. You know what I mean. I do. But in order for you to truly understand and appreciate what my secret is, I feel the need to tell you everything. Everything about me and my past, he said earnestly. Okay, but I make no promises to not interrupt you. I grinned. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Just promise me something. I was thrown off but said, that depends on what it is. Promise me you will listen to my whole story. Promise me that you wouldn't hate me, and promise me that you wouldn't leave. He grabbed my hand in his and begged me with a look of fright in his eyes. I was at a loss for words. I audibly gulped. I will try, I said, not wanting to break any promises. He looked a bit disappointed at my answer, but a gentle smile as he went on. You see, my father and I both have the same secret, and so did my grandfather and great-grandfather and all the greats before him. So it's a family thing that was passed on to you? He nodded his head. Yeah, it is. He looked a bit wary and unprepared before he continued. Where should I start from? The beginning. And no, not when we met, but before that. To the start of this entire ritual, I said, determined. He stared deep within my eyes as he unfolded the history of the ritual. It started centuries ago. My how many ever great grandfather and his small pack occupied this land and the town of Fairburn. Wait, your ancestors owned all this land in Fairburn? I asked, astonished, as I cut him off. Yes, my family did. Once upon a time. Now if I can get back to the story. I nodded my head ferociously to hear the story. Well, about a decade after my grandfather occupied the land which was supposed to be for expanding his pack, the humans invaded Fairburn. I raised my hand timidly as a gesture to ask a question, and Thane smiled, but I could tell it didn't reach his eyes. Why do you term everyone else but your pack as humans? I quizzically asked. Well, if you listen and stop interrupting, maybe you'll know, he said pointedly but jokingly. Fine. I mumbled dejectedly at him. With one last chuckle his expression turned sober, and he went on. So when the humans demanded our land, my grandfather decided to scare them off. Little did he know, however, that among those humans were hunters who just so happened to dedicate their lives to finding and eradicating the last of my kind. Nox, my many great-grandfather, obviously didn't like the idea of his enemies on his pack agreed to a full-out war against the humans. My mind was reeling with questions, but I dare not say a word because Thane was on a roll and I needed him to continue explaining. What Nox didn't realize would happen that day was finding himself falling in love. At his time it was uncommon for us to have human mates, but it was a truly rare thing for alphas to have human mates. Nox scowled and remembered our pack. The Blood Moon pack. Ever having a human Luna, but the moon goddess worked her abilities in magical ways, so Nox knew he was going crazy. Moon goddess, I blurted out. Understanding my confusion, Thane answered without hesitation. Just as you have your form of a god. My kind worship our goddess who is called the moon goddess. Trying to comprehend the crap coming from this guy as I motioned for him to continue. So the night that Nox was going to the humans to declare a war, he saw the most gorgeous woman he had ever set his eyes upon. Ida, his mate. Nox knew right at that moment that Ida was his mate and he sought her out. Nox had a different ways compared to me in telling his mate what he was. Except you haven't told me yet, I pointed out. True, but he practically dragged her into the woods and showed her who he was. The only difference is that you didn't drag me into the woods, but you basically dragged me to your crazy town. I explained, exasperated. Guilty, he chuckled. Well, I see your point, but his approach was more direct. I rolled my eyes at him and he just smirked and continued. Right, where was I? So Ida had an irrefutable hate towards Nox. She almost rejected the poor man, but with little convincing she felt the attachment she had for Nox. Thane gave me a sideways glance trying to suggest something. So they secretly met each other in Fairburn until Ida's father found them one day. Her father, who just so happened to be the lead hunter. Sort of a Romeo and Juliet story they had, I guess. Nox, however, ran off with Ida as they physically couldn't be taken apart. Nox brought her to this town where he decided he will allow the humans to retain Fairburn since some of them were Ida's family. For the next year they both lived with the pack. Ida became pregnant in the short time and had her baby boy. Within a month of Nox and Ida's childbirth, Ida's father and his team of hunters found our village. Nox led his pack far away from the house, where Ida and her child were to stay protected, as the rest went to fight Ida's father. Through the mate bond they had, Ida could have physically and mentally feel Nox's pain and couldn't bear it anymore. So she left her baby in the care of the Beta's wife and speed off towards Nox. Even as a frail human, Ida knew she had to protect her pack as the Luna as a mother. When she arrived at the battleground, it was like a red veil covered the dirt. There was blood everywhere and dead bodies, both human and my kind, that was scattered around the field. Ida raced towards where her father and Nox were as she dogged the other fighters. Nox saw Ida coming from a mile away, and as her father unknowingly fired a bullet, Nox's wolf jumped in front of her body. I could feel my heart racing as I yearned to hear more. I could somehow feel the pain of Thane's ancestors if the scene was happening right before my eyes. Everything went still as I slowly saw Nox's body fall to the ground. With a deadly pain she dropped to the floor next to his body as he shifted back to his human form. She could have felt his pain shoot through her again, and again like an ever-ending song stuck on repeat. Then as if the moon goddess was looking upon Ida, she suddenly did something neither herself nor anyone knew she could do. She manipulated the elements. Pack members of that day described it as the wind furiously whipping around Ida and Nox while the grass wrapped around Nox's torso, where he got shot. Ida placed her hands on Nox's body and somehow absorbed his pain and healed him. It was described as an absolute miracle that no one saw coming. Ida was then the one lying on the floor as Nox's pain was too unbearable for her to cope with. Nox wasn't sure what just happened or how he was still alive, but he just woke up all his senses immediately. Ida had one last request for Nox as she felt her body deteriorating. Ida didn't want to ever see what happened that day to happen again. She refused to see misjudgment and violence destroyed groups of people she loved dearly. So lying on the forest floor, Ida declared that to overcome their differences and finally live in peace, the next Luna of the Blood Moon Pack was to be human. A human of the Fairburn town, who her son was to find exactly 20 years after that day and become the Luna. On the first lunar eclipse of that year, her son was to be permitted into Fairburn to find his Luna. However, she wanted us to live separately. No humans in this territory and none of my kind in Fairburn, as she knew they couldn't live in peace just yet. Not knowing what to do, Nox agreed to what Ida had said, and with her last breath she whispered, "Take care of our son and remind him that I love him." With that Ida died in Nox's arms, and Ida's father was enraged. Not caring for what his daughter would have wanted, he shot Nox straight to his heart without warning as he thought Nox killed his daughter. So both lovers lay on the forest floor in each other's arms as the pack kill did as father and the remaining hunters. My heart hurt for Ida and Nox because somehow I felt as if I had a close connectivity with Ida. My heart went out to hers as I learnt her story. Thane saw my grief expression and put his arm around me in a comforting gesture, and it was until then that I realized how close I had gotten to him on the bench. With both feet tucked under me and an arm around me, I somehow felt safe. What happened after? I managed out. He seemed a little distracted by what I said, and he was finally brought back to his senses. Oh, right. After they killed the hunters, the Bata returned to Fairburn to inform on the humans who was a leader of what took place and did his last request. So with a mutual agreement they both decided that the humans would occupy Fairburn and never wander into the forest that leads to our town. No humans were to know the way into the forest, and no one from my town was to set foot into Fairburn. The Bata and his wife then raised it as a Nox's son while running and extending the pack. After 20 years had passed and their son, Isaac, took alpha position, and the Beta finally decided to inform him of his mother's last wishes. Without hesitation, Isaac agreed to follow through with his deceased mother's request and ventured into Fairburn on the first total lunar eclipse of that year. Your ancestors created the ritual, and Isaac went into Fairburn on the first ritual. I gulped as I shrugged then him off my shoulder and moved away from him on the bench. Emery, Thane reached out for me, but I cut him off as I rose to my feet. No, continue your story. He nodded and went on. By some miracle Isaac found his mate who was human. That night, in Fairburn, the pack thought that maybe the moon goddess granted his request for her son. But 20 years after, that same thing happened. The new alpha found his human mate in Fairburn. So from then on the pack and some of the humans came up with the ritual to the beast, where every 20 years the alpha of the Blood Moon Pack was to venture into Fairburn and find his mate. The elders of your town ensured that our kind were to be kept a secret, and that they were to carry out the ritual how they wanted to on their side of things. That's how they came up with the chaining in the forest and the white dresses. They wanted my kind to be in and out of their town quickly and without disruptions. So the alpha has one location to go find his mate, and she would be one of the few dressed in white. Honestly, it's a little bizarre for my liking, but it's tradition set by the humans," he concluded. I looked into his eyes as I just processed what he told me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Tax, territory, enthusiasm, ancient relatives. This was all the history of the ritual to the beast. Why your family is the cause of this entire thing? I asked before I started with my pressing interrogation. He nodded and got up from his seat. But that doesn't make sense, follow me, was all he had to say before he started walking towards the forest. I didn't know if I should be running in the opposite direction or follow him to see the final piece of the puzzle. But I needed to know. Because it was possible. It was a beast that night. But somehow the S family was a part of it. I intertwined my shaking palms together as I said my prayers and followed my due. Chapter 12. What are you? Where are you taking me? To show you what I am. To tell you my secret. I asked even though I could probably guess. You'll see. Just don't hate me, he said looking back at me with peaceful eyes. After walking a short distance, we were surrounded by trees and completely alone. Then, without warning, Thane started to strip, full on removing his clothes piece by piece. Thane, what the hell are you doing? I shouted to him. Afraid someone will find us and get the wrong impression. He just gave me a cheeky grin and continued on with his weird actions. When he removed his shirt, I couldn't help but drool a little over his 8-pack abs. I was sure HES been putting in hours at the gym. However, when he started removing his pants, I looked down at the moss-covered floor, letting my hair cascade over my face to cover the red tint of my cheeks. Emery, for you to truly understand what I mean, you need to look at me, he called over. I hesitantly obliged and lifted my head up, while I averted my eyes to focus on his while trying not to look anywhere to the south region of his body. Show me, I said after he waited for me to be ready. And as if in slow motion, I heard the sound of bones cracking as Thane bent on all 4 of his limbs. His hands and feet changed into the shape of legs of an animal while pitch-black fur sprouted from his skin, and dagger-like claws came through his nails on his now animal-like feet. This head transformed into a skull shape of a wolf as his entire human features reshaped into that of a wolf. He had wolf ears, a snout and round crimson blood, red eyes which I instantly recognized. Thane was the beast. I wanted to scream and cry. I wasn't sure which emotion was stronger at the moment. Terrified was definitely my main emotion as I thought about it. My soul was internally screaming and pushing me to run, but my physical body just stood there in one spot without showing an ounce of emotion. I looked at it. Him, unsure what to do. Should I yell at him? Should I run away like the scared little girl I felt like I was on the inside? I felt exposed and vulnerable as if he was to rip my throat out. But I knew better. Thane would never hurt me. Oh, so he claimed. But how does one feel seeing their greatest fear in front of them, staring directly into their eyes? A single tear escaped my eye unconsciously, yet I didn't know why. It may be because I raised my expectations of Thane. I wanted him to be a normal guy with a reasonable explanation for this whole messed up scenario. Yet here I am with him in front of me without him being actually in front of me. The animal and the man that stood before me had me questioning life and existence. Was anything not real? Were all the fairy tales true? Most importantly, did I still feel the same way about Thane knowing the truth? He approached me slowly as if gauging my reaction before he scared me off. Somehow knowing who the beast actually is behind all the fur and scary eyes didn't have me as scared as I should have been. But what was this monstrous creature before me? He was too big to be a dog or a wolf. He was the size of a lion. No, he was definitely larger. I was still a bit shaken up though, frozen on the spot. But as he came closer, my brain suddenly connected to the realistic part of me and moved a step back. The beast's facial expression resembled that of regret. He went down onto his tummy and lay there bowing his head to me. I assumed it was a sign of him not going to hurt me as he whimpered. This creature had me under some sort of spell because the next thing I knew I walked to him and sat on the dirt. I reached out my hand carefully, afraid that he will snap my hand right off, but he shook his head in a nod for me to proceed and I placed my hand on his head. His fur was amazingly soft and I couldn't help but be amazed at my current situation. How has the days changed into something I never expected to be a part of? The most creative part of me couldn't even have fathomed this. How was this even possible? Thane lifted his head and moved my hand away with his head, and then licked my hand with his tongue. You're really gross, you know that, I said, wiping off his germs on his fur. Thane rose from his position on the ground as I got up, and he trudged back to his clothes. In a matter of seconds he shifted back into his human form, leaving me speechless once again at this magnificent and unexplainable creature. His presence defied all laws of science and what everyone knew about our existence. I had no clue on where to begin figuring him out. When he finished, pulled on his clothing, he turned to face me. A bit apprehensive, he looked a bit terrified, as if I was going to run for the hills and full out reject him. Instead I asked, "What are you?" I stared at him, waiting for a response as he fidgeted. He began, but I snapped. My mind woke up from its trance-like state, and I felt the fright clawing at my insides. "The beast," I yelled at him. "How dare you? You sick. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Maniacal creature like you. You shouldn't even exist. You're a spawn of the devil, and I swear to God I will rid you from this earth." I screamed some biblical words at him. If I had holy water, he would probably be drenched in it by now. Before I knew it, Thane pushed me up against the nearest tree and held his face so close to mine I could feel his breath as it fanned across my cheek. "I'm not a goddamn beast," he growled every word lowly, "and I definitely was placed here by the devil." He snapped close to my ear. I was intimidated by his presence and pressed further into the tree. "I'm sure you have no realistic excuse for shifting into an animal." I spat at him. "That animal you just saw was me, and I couldn't be prouder of my true self, sweetheart," he announced proudly. "Do you want to know what I really am?" he whispered in a sinister tone in my ear. Even though curiosity nipped at me to listen to him, I felt as though I couldn't hear a single word he was saying. I felt as if I was a caged animal as it struck me that Thane, my biggest nightmare, stood directly in front of me. I could feel my heartbeat quickening and my blood rushing to my brain, making me dizzy. My hands shook and my breathing became labored. Was it time to face the truth of Thane's mystery? "Get away from me," I panted out before my brain cells could have interpreted what I was saying. It suddenly felt as if it was no longer a kidnapped case, but rather I was living a horrifying nightmare version of Beauty and the Beast. Except I was no beauty, and he was more animalistic than the beast himself. "Am use or what I am? Don't you want an explanation? Don't you have questions?" he desperately asked me. Realizing that he was standing directly in front of me, I quickly pushed it and angrily rasped out, "What do you want me to say? Do you honestly expect me to just smile and accept that my biggest nightmare is standing in front of me and telling me that everything is going to be okay? What more of an explanation can you have after the show you just displayed there?" I honestly think that summed it up pretty well. "So you know what I truly am?" he questioned as he watched me intently and expectantly. "There's nothing true about you. You're nothing more than a beast," I calmly said, looking him directly in his hooded eyes. He looked at me with a deep anger. "This is who I am, and if you can't accept that, then what are you waiting for? Reject me," he growled as the windows to his soul stood up a storm. At that point I couldn't deny that when he said the word reject, I felt a strange pain pulling at my heartstring. I wanted to fall apart at my situation, but I did enough of that to last a lifetime. Before I could comprehend this peculiar feeling in me, Thane suddenly and without warning transformed into the beast and ran off, leaving me to my solitude in the woods as shreds of his clothing fell around me. In a matter of seconds his heavy footsteps faded away and a piercing howl rang through the air. I didn't know what to do, how to wrap my head around what just happened, how to accept of Thane being the beast. I felt as though the world was crumbling under my feet, and with shaky steps I leaned against the tree behind me, and my body fell at its trunk, bringing me to the ground in a pile of confusion and utter insanity. I tried going back to that night, the night I first met Thane. From the moment we met in the woods on that horrific night, I knew there was something that attracted me to Thane. But then again, I knew that there was something odd about him. First off, all the fact that I never saw him before raised suspicion, and I should have screamed stranger danger because no one beside hunters of the beast went into the forest. Plus the fact that he was just wandering around in the woods alone at night brought me chills. There was no doubt in my mind, now that he was snooping around to find his victim. The undeniable pull between us was something. But now I knew why. I was the one he had planned to take all along. That's why he said he will see me soon. After the ritual, I kept waiting for the beast to turn up any second. Kind of living with paranoia that this enormous furry animal would pop out of the woods and then chew my head off. I also had an inkling of a feeling that Thane was somehow my knight in shining armor. The mysterious guy that just so happened to be my undercover protector who would have kept me safe. Instead, my knight died when he shifted into that creature. Now he was more like my sworn enemy. To think I've constantly been with the beast for the last 3 days baffled me. He was right in front of me this entire time. Maybe I should have let Jake chip me with his tracking device now. I shook that thought out of my head as soon as I thought of it. He was most definitely more evil than the beast or Thane. I stared in front of me at the open field where there were now strips of clothing left behind from Thane. I tried wrapping my head around what he was, what he is, but my brain felt as if it was on overdrive. The initial shock of what I saw no more than a half hour ago hadn't worn off and I felt like screaming. How was it possible? Most importantly, how is it possible for me to still feel a pull towards him? Even though I have only known him for 3 days, I feel as if I've known him all my life. And that scared me more than anything. As I looked to the sky and contemplated my situation, it struck me that I wasn't afraid of Thane. I was afraid of who he was. The furry animal he evolved into scared the crap out of me, and not knowing its capabilities had me shaken. But then I guess everyone was terrified of the inevitable. I knew the human side of Thane was caring, protective, and maybe a tad jealous at times, but did I know the beast? Does Thane completely vanish when he transforms, or does he regain control? Would he be more primal or retain his human aspects? Maybe I should have given him a chance to explain everything. Maybe I should strongly consider staying out here in the wilderness and either dying from hypothermia during the night or getting torn apart by a bear. Both options still had the possibility of death because I had no idea what was going to happen if I approached Thane. He seemed furious when he stormed off as the beast, and I wasn't sure if I was ready. But if not now, then when? It was like I knew how to return home on my own anyways. Plus there was the fact that there was a ring sitting on my right hand as a constant reminder that I was Thane's future bride. In a sick, twisted way I felt proud of having the honor of wearing this ring, but I had no idea of the repercussions for feeling that way. Could I still accept my fate after learning of Thane? Could I accept becoming his wife? Would I turn like him? For Christ's sakes, I was only 19. Thane was 19 as well, and I had no idea how he could accept his fate of just marrying a complete stranger. Maybe there's a way out of this. Maybe if I tell him I hate him or tell him I can never accept him, he will let me go. After all, yesterday he was dead set on me hating him after today. But I need answers before I do that. Time to face the no longer playful, gentle Thane, but rather the harsh one I hadn't had the chance of encountering before. Now I'm going to have to be the bigger person and approach Thane because he seemed to be done with my stubbornness and getting me to listen. I guess I should work on my timeliness for not listening. So with a warrior-like spirit and courage shooting through my veins, I got off the ground with a sudden adrenaline and marched my way back to Thane's house. Luckily he knew my lack of coordination, so we didn't trail far off into the woods. Spotting the house, I stopped and inhaled and exhaled as I tried to get rid of most of my anxiety. It's now or never. Do or most likely die. As I approached the front door, I clearly and loudly heard Thane's booming voice. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Lilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Tensed and livid, he was shouting orders to God knows which poor soul. And it's my entire fault. With my heart beating rapidly, my head spinning and my hands shaking, I timidly and cautiously opened the door. Bailey was standing just on the other side of the door, and as I entered she turned and gave me a pitiful look as if she knew my situation. In his office, she mouthed and pointed the way as she silently told me where he was. Thank you, I silently answered. As I stood outside his door, I hear him growling and shouting. How could you have let this happen? Ensure the perimeter is secured at all times. And never let this happen again. I wondered what he was going on about, but knowing I wouldn't figure it out, I gently knocked on his door. The other side of the door went dead silent, and I knew he heard me. Suddenly the door flew open, and a distressed Lucas and another guy I presumed was Bo, then Estrainer and Best Fight, walked out, eyeing me cautiously with some relief. When they were gone, I looked into the office and saw him staring lost at me. He had an enraged, indignant, sullen look. Boy, was he pissed. As his eyes fell on me, he visibly softened but held a distressed, tormented melancholy look, and he seemed distant. Trying to find my voice, I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I cleared my throat and tried again. See, can I come in? I softly said, not knowing how in the world he heard me. He gestured with his head for me to enter. With shaky steps I walked in and shut the door. Lock it, he tensely said from behind me. Unwillingly following his instructions, I locked the door, turned around and approached his desk. I looked at him, waiting for him to speak, but he remained silent in his seat. He waited expectantly for me to say something, but I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. What can I do for you, Emery? He roughly asked. I want an explanation. I want to hear you out. I slowly answered as my gaze shifted away from him. He got up from his office chair and walked towards me. I couldn't help but take a step back, and the hurt in his eyes was visible. Come, he ordered as he led me to the leather sofa in the corner of his office. Hesitantly, I took a seat next to him and looked him in the eye as I listed my questions in my brain. Well, what do you want to know? He impatiently asked. Or do you just want to know how to properly reject me? I looked at him confused still. Reject you? I asked, bewildered. His stare hard and unturned cold. So do you want to reject me? He asked icily. What? No. I rushed out. That's not what I want to do. I don't even know what you mean by rejecting you. I hurriedly answered. You aren't rejecting me. Confusion and relief both flooded his expression. No, I'm not. I shake my head, and suddenly the aching feeling inside of me disappeared. He seemed as if he couldn't even process what was happening, and in turn remained silent. I'm ready, Thane. I want the truth. The whole truth, and don't sugarcoat it. I need to know that what I just saw out there wasn't a figment of my imagination. I said earnestly. What do you want to know, Emery? He asked cautiously. You said you were the Alpha. I pointed out. Yeah. As I told you, I am the leader of the pack. He said, unsure of where I was going with this. What is the pack, Thane? I asked quietly. He hesitated. The pack is my friends and family. They are all what I just showed you outside. None of them would hurt you, however. How do you know that for sure? I raised my eyebrows in question. Because you're either Luna and they would never dare to hurt you. He said with conviction. What's Luna? The person who served beside the Alpha. The other leader of the pack and my equal. He said with pride. I tried to wrap my head around everything that he was saying, but I knew to fully understand the logistics and beast lingo. I had to know what he was. What are you? I finally managed to ask as I looked him into his eyes. He was taken aback from the question, but surprise didn't cross his face as he knew the question was bound to come up. He rose from the couch and stood his ground as he cleared his throat. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Don't give me that crap, Thane. I just saw you shift into that animal. So try me. I said, exasperated. Point taken. He said, prolonging my wait. Just tell me. I shouted impatiently. I'm a werewolf. He whispered, but I'm sure I heard him correctly. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry or scream. I may even be going insane. A werewolf. I sure didn't see that one coming. Chapter 13, Panic Attack. I started laughing uncontrollably until I couldn't catch my wits. No, just no. I giggled at his response. I felt like I couldn't breathe at an oddity of a joke now. He asked, incredulous. Emery, I'm telling you the truth. I swear to the moon goddess. He said, and smiling with a solemn look. To up. I said, clutching my stomach in a fit of giggles. He walked towards me in one long stride and grasped my face with a grim look. Do I look like I'm joking with you? His expressions opened me up at all the things I learned and saw today. This was by far the most ridiculous thing I heard, but maybe not the most impossible. You aren't funny, Thane. If you were a comedian, you would have sucked. I clarified. Emery, I've told you my history and shown you what I am. How could you not believe me? He asked, exasperated. I looked at him as if he grew to heads. Thane, you just said you're a werewolf, so excuse me if I live in the reality side of the world. Tell me one thing, he asked, releasing my face. I rolled my eyes at him. What? Tell me what you think a werewolf is. He looked at with a poker face. With a skeptical look, I retaliated with my little knowledge on the supernatural. From the 0 werewolf books I've read, a werewolf is like a hybrid human-wolf. Animalistic thing. Animalistic thing. He questioned, amused. Yeah, like kissing to the human who shifts into her, and I stopped mid-sentence as the lightning struck me. Go on. Continue. He nudged. How hell? He asked, bewildered. How is it possible? That means you finally believe me. Don't get ahead of yourself. Just tell me if you're real. He lifted my hand gently and placed it on his chest. In as real as I can get, Emery. I showed you what I am. A werewolf. My hand began to shake in his grasp and I felt like my entire world was falling apart. All that I ever thought were fairy tales in this world was all a lie. Emery, are you okay? Thane asked when I hadn't said a word, but I suddenly felt anxious. My hand shook uncontrollably and I felt the air being sucked out of my lungs. I was having a panic attack. I fell to the ground on my knees as Thane followed me to the floor. Sweetheart, you need to breathe. Thane looked absolutely terrified, but I didn't have it in me to speak. Baby, look at me and focus on my voice. Breath. In and out. Deep breaths. Relax him right here. He tried calming me down as he pulled me to him on his lap. Breathe. Listen to my voice. Slowly breathe in and out. In and out. I vaguely heard him. His scent brought a sense of harmony to me, and feeling his heartbeat through his shirt were. His scent calmed me down and I took a much-needed long breath in heart. Suddenly the door swung open, breaking the lock. And Drive. Adler from the infirmary walked in. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Luna. He greeted us as he rushed to our sides. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She started to shake when I told her what we are. She couldn't breathe. Her face went pale and she fell to the floor. Thane recapped my symptoms. Adler checked my heart rate, blood pressure and pulse before he drew blood from my finger to test my blood sugar. Is she all right? Thane asked in panic. Her blood pressure is quite high, but I think it was the initial shock of finding out what you are that gave her a panic attack. With a good rest, she should be just fine. Adler offered me a gentle smile and left, but not before saying, Don't stress her out too much, Alpha. With a sigh of relief, Thane pulled me into his arms and buried his face in the crook of my neck. Oh, thank the moon goddess, you're all right. I wrapped my arms around Thane and sniffed in his woodsy scent, which instantly calmed me down. The effect this guy had on me is unnerving. Come on. I think that's enough for today, Thane said as he pulled me up and swooped me off my feet as he carried me out the door bridal style. No, I won't. I need to hear more. I argued, but he gave me a serious look. I said that's enough for today, he said in a final tone. As we began walking up the stairs, the silence was discomforting. You know, I can walk right. And I can allow you to. But my wolf needs you right now after what just happened, he replied. Your wolf? I questioned. He looked me in my eyes and I can still feel the fright I held just moments ago in his office. I will tell you. But right now, sweetheart, I need you to be safe and to rest. I stayed quiet after that as I had an overwhelming sense of belonging right there in his arms and I didn't know what to say to him. Thane walked to his room and placed me on his bed with a lingering kiss on my forehead. It sent electricity shocks through my body. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Thane whispered in my ear. It'll be right outside, he said before he left. I did something unlike me. Wait, Thane. I called back. He turned back to me on high alert. Is everything all right? Stay. Don't leave me alone. Please. I asked the question I thought I never would as I moved around in the bed and left a place for him. Emery, you need to rest right now, he argued. No, what I need right now is to not be alone. Please, Thane, I pleaded. His eyes softened, and without another word, he strode over to the bed and laid down facing me. We just laid there, staring each other in the eyes as we looked beyond each other's souls into our innermost self, looking and searching for answers to help us cope with what we were feeling. This attraction I had to Thane was indescribable but so real that I wondered if I could do this. Could I actually be with him? Be with a werewolf? At that moment I knew two things. I couldn't leave Thane, and I miss my family immensely. As if reading my mind, Thane asked, "Tell me about your family." It was both a great distraction and something I can enjoy talking about. There are my parents, and I have a little sister named Avery. We've lived in Fairburn forever. Dad actually met my mom there when he was on an exploration trip, and he fell in love with her. After that they got married, bought a house, and had me and Avery. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She's 15. A bit bummed out that she couldn't take part in the ritual. Quite frankly, my sister and you might actually get along quite well. She loves the outdoors, and she always believed the beast was much more than the stories. If she only had the chance to meet you. I smiled, remembering my little sister's obsession with the ritual and all things supernatural. Seems like the wrong sister was chosen. Thane chuckled. You miss them, don't you? He asked, brushing a stray wisp of my hair out of my face. Yes, they were my everything, and we all stuck together after Avery was diagnosed. I whispered as my heart ached not being able to be by my sister's side while she was struggling. Thane placed his hand on my shoulder in a comforting gesture as if he could have felt my pain. Diagnosed with what? He quietly asked. When she turned 14, she was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. As I talked about my baby sister, I felt a lump in throat and to prickle with tears. I'm sure everything's going to be fine. I know it, Emery. Your sister is going to live and grow to be a beautiful young woman who is going to find her human mate one day, he said, sincerely looking into my eyes. Her surgery was supposed to be done in a few months. My parents and I worked every day around the clock to help save up for her surgery. I just hope she knows in with her, and I hope my parents are able to fund her surgery. Is that why you wanted to go back? Mostly. I made it my obligation to help my sister until her last breath. I'm sorry, Emery, but you can't back. Who knows what will happen to my pack or you if the humans ever found us, he said with remorse. I gave him a sad but understanding smile as I placed my hand in his. I know. I understand now, Thane, I assured him, and I appreciate you framing this, I said, grabbing the picture frame with my family's picture that I brought with me. He gave me a shy smile. I thought you'd appreciate it, but you didn't need to hide it. It's your people who said you weren't allowed to have any memorabilia on you for the ritual. My pack only requested for electronics to be banned. Thank you, though. I feel as if I have them watching over me. Fond memories with my family filled my mind, and it couldn't help but bring a smile on my face. Can I ask you something? He suddenly asked. Is it because of your sister's condition that you chose to become a doctor? He asked with interest. Yes, after she was diagnosed, I made an oath to her that I will help her. I know it's very far-fetched, but I felt as if I could somehow be a part of helping her. I could save her, because there isn't a cure for what she has. But maybe I could have changed that. I could tell you'll be a great Luna. Your passion and selflessness doesn't cease to amaze me, Emery, Thane said proudly. I blushed as his compliment, but I had no idea what the role entailed. Have you ever gotten a panic attack before? He asked with concern etched on his face. Suddenly I was back in the hospital, remembering all the sleepless nights and the anxious waiting. Yeah. Every time my sister was in the hospital and the wait became too long, I got panic attacks. It started the first night Avery was rushed into the hospital because she was extremely weak. I was so worried, and my mind kept thinking about the worst case scenario when my lungs would feel as it was suddenly on fire and I felt suffocated. In a matter of a heartbeat, I was wrapped in his arms, and as much as I wanted to fight him, I didn't have in me, and I didn't want to leave his warm embrace. It was like a safety blanket protecting me from the world. But I had one thing stuck in my mind, wondering who would protect me from him. I never want that to happen to you again, Emery. Never. I promise you I will ensure nothing ever happens to you. Just please don't scare me like that again. He placed another kiss on my forehead and suddenly it was my new favorite thing. You know, I said looking up at his face. No one has ever calmed me down so fast before. Normally it took my parents forever to get me to breath or even concentrate on them. He looked like he won the lottery with that one. Didn't I tell you we're soulmates? No, I never heard you said that. We fell into a comfortable silence and just laying there in the arms never felt more peaceful. Honestly, I never thought I would be in this position with him after how we met in the whole kidnapping thing. Which reminded me. I asked to ensure he was still awake. Ya sweet cheeks. Since when did I give you permission to call me that? I asked instead. Since I just said it. He replied, egotistical lie. Okay, sugar bear. I grinned heavily. His eyes almost popped out his head. No way. No, take it back. Take sweet cheeks back. I countered. He begrudgingly agreed to our compromise. Okay, but in keeping, sweetheart, he said in a serious tone. I rolled my eyes at him but continued. Right, so what I was about to ask, if I can ask some follow-up questions. He looked a bit anxious but pulled us both up so we were sitting against the headboard and I unwillingly pulled out his arms. Ask away. Okay, so are you all werewolves? I felt silly saying that word but he did show me what he was. So how can I still deny it? Maybe I was trapped in some vivid dream that went on and on forever. He gave me a little smile. Yes, my pack and I are all werewolves. Except my mother. Wait, your mom was the last girl taken in the ritual. I said with realization. Yeah. So if you ever need someone to talk to, just ask her. She went through the same thing as you, Emery. She would understand better than anyone else. He expressed. I'm not sure she would want to talk to me after the last time I spoke to her. I was ashamed of my actions and wished I had the chance to apologize to her and tell her how sorry I was. Don't worry, she's a forgiving person. He grinned. So much I highly anticipate that you're already forgiven. Thank you. Maybe if you could ask her if I can talk to her sometime soon. She would love that. Okay, so next question. Would I ever become like you? He looked confused. A werewolf? Yeah. Would I ever turn into a wolf? Do you want to? He gave me a strange look. Oh God, no. I just have to ask. He chuckled at my response. Firstly, it's not bad being a werewolf. It's powerful. And secondly, you don't have a thing to worry about. You'll remain a human. Okay. Great, I guess. So you told me that you brought me here because of your mate. That we are supposed to get married. I asked for clarification. Well, when werewolves are born, the moon goddess pairs us with a mate. Our soulmate. You already know that story of why I have a human mate. So when we find each other, the attraction will be so powerful that we will connect on a spiritual level. Both our minds and body. Part of that process is going through a sort of wedding type ritual. Oh please, not another ritual. To my agent extraordinaire, my Nilgan. Hearts out thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Don't worry. You wouldn't be chained in the white dress you wear would be to symbolize our bond. Why exactly do you need a mate? Because as I told you before, enthusiasm and the alpha of the pack, and in order to run this pack I need a Luna. The woman who would run the pack by my side is my equal and the mother of the pack. Without you, Emery, this pack and I wouldn't be able to function. I would feel as if I was missing a huge part of my life, and I wouldn't have the correct mindset to handle the pack and be the leader they need. So this is our destiny. We're meant to run this pack together. I questioned. Yes, that and one more thing. He trailed off. A bit apprehensive. What thing? I asked suspiciously. Well, you see, the thing is. He laughed awkwardly. You were meant to have my kids. He rushed out. I looked at him confused. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. We're meant to have kids to continue the alpha line. He explained slowly. I almost lost my shit. To my agent extraordinaire, Marlene Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Did you just say kids? I asked in horror. Yeah, we're expected to have our first child by next year. He shrugged like it no big deal. Are you hearing yourself right now? I asked, exasperated. I'm only 19 for crying out loud. Yeah, and I'm 19 too. But it's what's expected. Emery, I understand what you must be thinking right now. Trust me, I do. But in the next 20 years, our next alpha is going to have to be at least 19 to take up alpha duties and find his mate. Thane, do you realize how absurd this all is? I said, bordering anger. Emery, I was in your position not long ago. Just imagine at age 16 your parents tell you that you must find your mate, and we're both expected to be popping babies out by a year after the ritual. I can't deal with this. No, we're too young for this. I said, shaking my head. Thane pulled me to his chest and soothed me. Hey, don't stress over this, okay? We don't have to do anything you don't want, and I don't want you stressed right now. We have all the time in the world to figure this out. Yeah, you're right. Maybe we don't have to have kids right away, I said, shrugging as I tried to convince myself. That's right, and a werewolf pregnancy only takes 5 months, so we have roughly 7 months to figure everything out. 5 months? I asked in confusion. We grow at a faster pace and therefore the baby develops faster than a human child. He explained, and I just nodded as I wanted to move away from this conversation. Switching topics. But how did you know it was me at the ritual? How did you know I was your mate? I knew since the night I met you in the forest. He answered earnestly. You did? I asked, detaching myself from his arms. Well, not quite. At the age of 16, werewolves can usually find their mate. It's from the way they smell. It's usually the most beautiful and powerful fragrance for your mate, and when you finally meet them and look them in the eye, you instantly know. Your wolf calls out to his mate, and it's like magic. Suddenly your life is complete and the missing puzzle piece is found. But for me, I had to wait until now since the ritual prevented me from finding you before. But for me it was a little different. Since you're human, your scent wolf's is pronounced as a wolf scent, so I couldn't exactly tell. So how did you know it was me? I asked curiously. You looked at me sincerely. Believe it or not, the moment I caught your human scent I knew there was something different about you, and I knew you were the one. The eclipse on the night of the ritual somehow opens up my senses to an extreme, so since it was close by I had an inkling of a feeling that you were my mate. That's why I told you that I would see you soon. The night of the ritual you were 100% sure I was your mate. I said rather than asked. Yeah. When I stepped into the forest my senses were driving me insane. Suddenly I was intoxicated with this beautiful aroma that drove me wild. When I saw you, my wolf instantly called out to you. But when you blacked out I basically lost my shit and carried you away from Fairburn as quickly as possible. I was confused. So why didn't you tell me who you were before, when we first met? Because I wasn't allowed to, he simply stated. One of the elders also told me that she met my mate a few days before I met you. He revealed. There are human elders here. I asked, bewildered, because as far as Thane told me, no humans was set foot into the S-town. No, she's the oldest wolf in our pack. She was actually my grandfather's sister, so sort of like my grandmother. She never found her mate, so she lived as a human in your town where she communicates anything about the ritual from my people to the humans. He explained. It's possible for someone to not find their mate. I asked, shocked. He nodded. Believe it or not, someone's mate could be dead or live across the world. But it rarely happens. He has a relieved expression. I honestly don't know what I would have done if I hadn't found you, Emery. A wolf can drive himself to death if they don't find their mate. He said solemnly. Seems like I saved your ass. I sarcastically said to lighten the mood. If I was being honest, if I ever lost Thane now that I've met him, I didn't know what I would do with myself. To think I've only known him for a few days. I don't know if being stuck with you for life can be called saved. I was shocked at what he said. Fine. If you don't want to be stuck with me, then I'm out, I said to rile him up. He grabbed my hand gently as possessiveness was brought out from him. I wouldn't want to be stuck with anyone else, sweetheart. I smirked at him. Admit it. I'm your savior. My one and only, he admitted without a fight and a kiss behind my hand which he was holding. See, told you so. Thane stayed silent for a moment, contemplating something. "Can I ask you a question?" he quietly asked. I looked at him apprehensively. "Sure. Shoot. Were you and your boyfriend still together before the ritual?" He asked so silently that if I was sitting next to him I wouldn't have heard. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm," I said with a smile as I saw jealousy eating at him. He looked kind of angry. "I thought you wanted to implant a chip in your hand," he asked incredulously. "Doesn't mean I couldn't have gotten back with him." "Emery, don't test me," he growled angry. I laughed at his expression. "No geez. We were just talking about being mates and having kids and you thought I had a boyfriend. So you broke up with him?" he hesitantly asked. "Yes, Jake and I were over since you met me that night." "Good," he said, simply looking relieved. I knew I was going to kick myself for asking him this. Do you have a girlfriend?" He looked at me amused and lovingly. "No, you're the only one, Emery. The only girl for me." I blushed at his revelation and couldn't help but feel a little relieved myself. "What about that Dimbo? Bailey's sister?" I asked sorry. He laughed at my turmoil. "She's no one, Emery. You're my mate and you're my girl. You're the only one I want," he said, sincerely looking into my eyes. Not wanting to get all touchy-feely, I changed the topic again. "How did Drive? Adler get to us so fast when I had the panic attack?" "You didn't even call him." Thane tapped his forehead as if indicating the obvious. "I'm sorry, I don't get what you're trying to sell," I said after trying to decipher his action. "We communicate telepathically through our wolves. It's like sending a message through our brain," he simply explained. My jaw went slack as I looked at him, partially impressed and shocked. "You communicate telepathically?" "Sure do, sweetheart. Don't worry, you will be able to as well once we mate and I mark you," he explained. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "What are you talking about?" I asked suspiciously. He only grinned at me in reply. "I'll tell you another day." I just nodded in sure as I went on. "What about your wolf? You mention it as if it's your alter ego." "My wolf is a he, not on it. It's like a spirit that dwells inside me. It's sort of like my soul. He doesn't communicate with me or anything like that. It's basically like a presence inside of me that guides me when I'm a wolf. It's difficult to explain, but it is what it is. Every werewolf has a wolf alter ego, if that's what you want to call it." "Does he take over your control when you transform into a wolf, or are you in control?" "I'm in control," he said as he watched me curiously when I visibly relaxed at his answer. "I'm not going to hurt you when I shift Emery. I swear that I would never, and my wolf knows that you're my mate, so he wouldn't harm you either. But if I'm ever angry and you're too close, just walk a few feet away from me before I shift. Why? Because I don't to accidentally hurt you." He rubbed my cheek with his thumb. I nodded as I tried to remember my other questions. "You said that we had a bond." "Yes, our mate bond. It's what we feel for each other. I know that you feel a pull towards me, almost like a magnet. That's what it is, but for me it's more profound. I could smell you from a mile away and I could practically feel you whenever you're around. When you become a part of the pack officially, you would feel it too. We'd be able to feel each other's emotions, tell if the other is hurt, communicate through our mind, and you'll be able to smell you even further away. That's kind of bizarre." I picked at the duvet as I tried to avoid his gaze. "I suppose it is, but you'll come to appreciate it." He paused and quietly mumbled, "I hope. Bailey said that you're the boss man, the alpha. As the leader of the pack, is that what you are referred to?" He simply nodded with a smile. "Yes, and you're my equal. The Luna. Lucas is the beta, which is the second in command, and the delta is Bo, the third in command and one of the greatest fighters we have. After me, of course. You think very highly of yourself." I rolled my eyes. "I'll show you my moves, and then you can judge for yourself, sweetheart." He winked. Ignoring him, I went on. "How does the other girls on the night of the ritual not remember you?" "Well, my ancestors knew that if there were hunters in town, the alpha couldn't be sent alone into Fairburn. Therefore if other wolves were to go with Alpha, then there might be a chance of one of the girls or a hunter seeing us, so we needed to concoct something that we will be able to give anyone who sees us. My pack found this rare plant that when mixed with other substances, can cause a person to forget the last 24 hours. That's incredible. I know some drugs can cause memory loss, but I had no idea there was a plant. The doctor in me was reveling with this information, but knowing that fact now wouldn't help since I'm stuck in the Wolf town. I'll show you it sometime. But it doesn't work on wolves. Just letting you know in case you try it on me. You planted the idea in my head. Anyways, years ago, like before we were born, there were hunters who went looking for the beast. Those hunters showed up dead a week later. Can you explain that? I watched him carefully before he answered. I think that happened when my grandfather was the Alpha. I don't have the facts, but I think that the hunters were caught up by rogues and my grandfather, and some of the pack members went to save them. One of the hunters killed my grandfather, but the rogues killed all the hunters before my pack could save them. Typically the pack would just bury the bodies, but considering they killed my grandfather, the pack delivered the bodies back. I guess they did it as a means to instill fear into anyone else who dares to enter the forest. I didn't know that side of the story. I said with compassion, I'm sorry about your grandfather. It's okay, and we let the humans believe what they will. It keeps them away from the forest. What are rogues? I asked as I pinpointed the word from his story. Rogues are the wolves that tried to attack you the first day you were here. You mean the wolves? Like you? I said accusingly. Not like me or my pack. He clarified. Rogues are wolves that don't run in packs. They typically have no regard for rules and regulations. They kill who they wish to and they trespass on anyone's territory. They're despicable creatures. Some of them rather like a life alone act than be under an alpha. However, there are the rare few that are made rogues because their family or pack died. But mostly the rogues are kicked out for doing something stupid or they run away. They sound horrible. I wrinkled my nose. They are, but I promise you they'll never make it into the pack again or anywhere near you. Thane vowed. I smiled appreciatively at him. Wow. So that's everything about a werewolf, isn't it? Yes, I think your interrogation held every question possible. Can you imagine? Just a few days ago, I had no idea that werewolves existed, and now I'm mates with one. I yawned sleepily. I know it's hard to get around, and I know you hate me, Emery. But if I could, I would take it all back. I would take back being a werewolf and practically kidnapping you. If it meant I could have you. If it meant you wouldn't hate me as much. I would take it all back. He repeated to me honestly. Thane, I don't hate you. I shook my head at him as I lay down and my eyes closed. I don't expect you to forgive me or even show me an inch of respect after I dragged you into the mess that is my life and the ritual. I opened my eyes and I looked at him with as much honesty as I could muster. I don't hate you, Thane. Everything happens for a reason, and you and I being a part of the ritual means we were destined to be here. I may not feel as strongly as you do, but I feel something. You do? He asked, surprised. Ignoring him, I asked, just promise me something. Promise me there would be no more lies and absolutely no more secrets. I said rose-eyed as my eyes slipped back shut. He whispered as I fell into a deep slumber.